Welcome back. Let's continue talking about the technology space. And this time, not just from the lens of what companies like TCS and Infy are likely to report in these quarters' numbers in terms of margins and revenues, but the big picture. This is research coming in from Gartner. And in its latest forecast, Gartner is projecting that global technology spend is still very healthy. Despite all the noise surrounding the global banking turmoil, they're saying the global tech spend will stand at $4.6 trillion this year. And this is an improvement of more than 5% compared to the last year. In fact, compared to their prior projection, IT spending is actually expected to go up, despite all the headwinds that we spoke about. Naveen Mishra, Senior Research Director at Gartner, is now joining in. Naveen, this forecast is actually quite contrary to the noise and uncertainty that we're picking up in terms of headlines. Your forecast is worldwide IT spending will stand at $4.6 trillion. In the month of January, that number was $4.5 trillion. So what you're saying is, despite the U.S. regional banks going through a bit of a turmoil, the Credit Suisse saga, IT spending is actually going up in the last 3 months. Can you explain that for us?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me here. Two fundamental changes that we see in the marketplace now. Number one, there is a clear recognition of areas of more spend versus areas of lesser spend, and that is actually driving the net increase in the IT spend you see. The areas of lower spend are going to be more about devices, data centers, some of the other spend that are not critical to the business of an enterprise. They have been already reduced by the CIOs, and this is where we see some reduction. So let me be very clear. While yes, the IT growth is healthy for 2023, there will be areas where the spend is going to be lower than what we have seen in 21 and 22. So that's one. Secondly, there are clear areas of growth. For example, IT services, where we expect about 9+% growth. Software, where we expect about 12% growth. So these are the areas where CIOs who are actually trying to look at business outcomes, not only business solutions, but business outcomes. And in those cases, they want to improve the customer experience. They want to drive upsell. They have other business objectives. The technology which can deliver business outcome, that has become a priority despite all the turbulence that we see in this environment today. And that is why you see this second type of spend, which is more around business outcome-led spend. This is adding extra dollars that you just mentioned, in as compared to from the January revision to the April revision that we see. And now, that the CIOs are very clear in terms of how they are going to look at areas which are directly related with their business priorities and can support the business outcomes.
Okay, Naveen, so you remain optimistic. What do your insights, point towards when it comes to the banking sector? Because I think a lot of concern is around banks in the US, even in Europe for that matter, whether the ongoing credit events, whether that will lead to a bit of a delay in decision making and sort of loosening of the purse strings when it comes to IT spends.
To be clear, the banking issues and the failures that we see, that has negatively impacted the sentiment, and that may have led to exactly what you said, delayed buying, some concerns, and so on and so forth. But the specific examples that we have, especially around the failures, are more around digital natives and startups, those kind of companies. But if you look at the large enterprises, they have two things still as part of their focus. Number one, they're trying to modernize their applications. When we talk to their CIOs and their board members, they want to continue on their journey despite all of this happening. Yes, we might see some temporary challenges here and there, but that continues to be the one. Second, banks around the world continue to focus on the payment ecosystem and embracing variety of technologies into that. And that remains to be a business-led decision and goes back to my earlier point, which I said around business outcomes. So while there is some volatility, but there is no fundamental change in the way banks are going to look at IT.
All right, got that. Naveen, thanks for joining us. This is Pavitra. Just a word on the tech talent. You know, all of last year we were talking about this mad rush for talent, the talent wars, and now it's the layoffs which are making headlines, right? So take us through what that is really looking like internally for companies as far as the tech talent really goes.
Yes, Pavitra, and that's the most complex issue that every user and enterprise is facing. There are two forces playing out in that context. One, cost optimization, layoffs, activities which are not aligned with 1 or 2 year, the near future activity. Organizations and some of the big names that you have said, they continue to deprioritize it, and as an outcome, we are losing people and layoffs are happening. So that's one force. The second force, and I think going back to some of our earlier conversation, Pavitra and Rima, that we had in the past, is the skills which are needed to drive business outcomes. The reality is that is still a challenge. We still see issues around how to find that talent. We're still trying to create internal training programs that can actually support that. So IT service providers who can support those initiatives which are actually aligned with very immediate near-term business objectives, there is going to be a demand for this. There is a skill shortage. So I think, Pavitra, now in 2023, we need to look at both of these forces together. On one side, there is a pressure. On other side, there is a crisis in terms of the supply as well.
Okay, Naveen, finally, tell us, in terms, I don't know whether you track all of the Indian tech companies or which ones you do, but leave us with a sense on which ones to watch out for, what category, mid-cap, large-cap, companies that are more cloud-focused, SaaS. What are the lines of business which are likely to see the highest traction, and therefore what sort of companies might be the biggest winners of this year?
I mean, as Gartner, we can talk about IT services industry at large. Clearly, with all the changes which we see in the industry, those companies who are more focused on delivering the business outcomes, such as security, risk management, cloud services, consulting, specific on business, they are going to be more successful as compared to those companies who are still working on traditional delivery models, supporting legacy applications, still working on people and headcount. They are going to be the ones who will be challenged and will find it difficult to weather all this turbulence. So we really need to find those bright spots in the IT services companies who are actually aligned with these changes. And the good news is there are many of the large IT services companies, including many from India, who are actually driving this change as a part of a journey and transformation for themselves.
Naveen, we'll leave it to that. Thank you very much for joining in and throwing light on the technology environment in India and worldwide. Get into a break. On the other side, we'll discuss market fundamentals. We have officially kickstarted the earnings season. Delta Corp is out with numbers. Today, we'll react to TCS numbers post-market hours. So to get us a complete preview in terms of corporate expectations for Q4 FY23, we'll be joined by Unmesh Sharma of HDFC Securities.